28 Years Later is the next installment of the 28 blank later franchise. We had 28 days and 28 weeks, and then nothing for a long time. I believe it took 5 years to go from 28 days to 28 weeks. 2002, 2007, if I'm correct. But then after 2007, just nothing for a very long time. There are always like these whispers of like, maybe they've got something cooking up 28 months later. I think at a certain point they realized maybe too much time had passed, especially if eventually they might want to ask Cillian Murphy to come back. So 28 years later, we now have Alex Garland has talked about how he's writing this as a trilogy. They've already shot the next movie. It's coming out in January as of right now, as of recording this. That one is directed by Nia DaCosta, who did the Candyman movie recently. As the title suggests, 28 years later, Britain is still completely overrun with the rage virus, the rage zombies that are out there. It's completely quarantined off. They call it the mainland. That's where all of like the weird, rage zombies are. They come in different forms now. But we pick up on our character Spike, who's a young boy who lives on a very isolated island, off of the coast of like the mainland. They're kind of connected by this pathway that gets completely covered up when it's high tide. But when it's low tide, you could go to the mainland via that path. And in this film, his father, Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, is taking him on his first trip out to the mainland, while his mom, played by Jodie Comer, Isla, is home. And then some stuff happens from there. I went into this movie really excited because, number one, obviously, the teaser trailer for this is probably one of the best, teaser trailers that there is. I'm not going to say it's the best, but man, it's just so well edited. And as far as like a franchise coming back, I feel like they hit a lot of the right marks, a lot of the right tone that people wanted to feel, as far as like fans of the last two movies, but even people who are like, I've never seen it, but this definitely piques my interest. Number two, the fact that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland were going to be coming back. They only worked on 28 days later, 28 weeks later. They had some, people come in, but they might have been credited as producers, but they didn't really have as much creative input on that one. So I was excited to see, after all this time, why did they choose to come back? I was hoping it wasn't just, it's an easy cash grab kind of thing. I was hoping that they had a good reason to team up like this again. Reason number three, I'm a big fan of the last two movies. 28 Days Later I find excellent. And that's a movie that I feel like kicked off a lot of how modern zombie movies are approached today. But I think also at the end of the day, that first movie is just a really great tale of like a man waking up in this hellscape, lost and confused, and finding these people who are also just trying to survive. There's a pretty beautiful stretch of that movie where it's just like these people that have found each other just enjoying their time. And nearing the end of that film, you kind of get the sense of like, yeah, like even though it started off like bleak and it's ugly looking, like the camera aesthetic is like intentionally like pretty like jarringly ugly to look at. I think it's wonderful for that movie and that tone though. But then it kind of ends in like this, oh look, they're shooting with a proper camera now, and it's a little more hopeful when they're together. I really love that movie. It's one of those you could like very easily mistake as like it's simplistic, like it's not as good as what we've gotten with other stuff. I feel like something can be simplistic but also work very, very well. You just kind of have to know how to use it. And I think they definitely knew with that one. And 28 Weeks Later, I also enjoy. I don't think it's as good, like what I was saying, as far as like the character bonding stuff and in Days Later. I don't think there's enough room for that in Weeks, but I still really enjoyed that one. I like how they continue to push that world, and, the new characters I thought had some potential. There's an interesting storyline in that one. So that being said, the two installments of this franchise we've already gotten, I have liked or loved. So I was excited to see them come back after all this time just to see where we could go with this. And I kind of look at this movie in like two parts. You got half one and half two. Half one is what I was describing before, with Aaron Taylor Johnson with his son Spike, journeying across the mainland, and they kind of talk up the importance of like, this, every kid's got to do this, like, you're coming of age, you got to learn how to take care of yourself. This is what you do. You got to be a man. It's the journey of like boy to man in the very traditional sense of like you go out in the danger and you face it. You learn how to fight and how to survive. You learn the tricks of how to do it well. So they kind of separate it like that. That's the first half, very traditional kind of post-apocalypse zombie story. And if I can compliment Aaron Taylor Johnson real quick, I think he fits in really well with the character of Jamie. This heroic but kind of like stoic, kind of like nonchalant kind of way about it. He's playing this dad who's looking out for his son. He plays that part so well. And, it makes that first part so engaging. And, there's this great exploration of like the new kind of like rage zombies that are out there. And there's some great little moments of like action where Danny Boyle just has a great way of shooting. A lot has been talked up of like, they shot on iPhones, look at this rig. And it's like, yeah, that is all really impressive. And it lends the movie to like these incredible looking like edits and like cinematography moments where I'm like, I don't know if they could do this with like a normal film camera. I guess that's the benefit of having an iPhone attached to one of these large, camera ready lenses. If you have an iPhone attached to it, you can get away with some other shots, do some other stuff like that. And it all builds to this incredible tense like chase moment where I was like, fuck, what the hell is gonna go on in here? It's incredible. And you could say, the movie kind of peaks at that point. Like if you were just looking for this like survival horror thriller where you just get kind of like this zombie action and you have like very like kind of thin characters, like he's the dad, this is the son who's gonna learn. If that's all you're looking for in a movie, this part could threaten, it just peaked right in the middle kind of thing. But then what they have built up there, they then kind of dissect in a way that I found very interesting. And you explore a bit more with Jodie Comer's character, Isla. And I didn't really know the full extent of like what her character was going to be doing or what her character was all about. So I will not tell you here. And hands down, as far as like her talents today, she is one of the best working. And in this movie, wow, what a performance, and of course, in fear of spoiling, I do not want to talk too much about it, but she's kind of unbelievable in a sense, it's kind of incredible to see what she does and how she keeps you guessing, as well, like, tag teaming that, great screenplay, the great characters she has to work with, and just her natural, skills at being an actress. She keeps you guessing as far as like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? And how that builds into something else that I wasn't expecting. And Aaron Taylor Johnson's Jamie takes not a turn, but you just find out a bit more. And it is kind of like a response to like that first half, which I said is kind of like representative of like a more traditional survival kind of like thriller, like these character archetypes that we've seen a lot of. So I kind of saw this movie, I said it's split up into two halves, but I did not mean that in like a negative, like, oh, then it starts to go down a cliff. It's like you're watching the more traditional survival thriller, and then the second half is like a bit more of like a reaction, like a more modern kind of like companion to that, where you learn a bit more about the parental figures. And like it does to our main kid character, Spike, played by Alfie Williams, you start to, have a bit of like a change in your perception of like what your reality has been, like you feel like your parents, at a certain age, but as you get older, and you never really know when it is, it's kind of hard to pinpoint when exactly you start to pick up on stuff, right? When you grow up and you learn a thing or two about your parents. Like I said, not that it's like this drastic thing always, but it's just little things that just make you see them in a different light. That's kind of exactly what they're portraying here. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson's Jamie, you see him as like the, he's the dad who's going to protect and he's going to save. And then you see a bit of his faults and you're like, okay, it's not that those things weren't completely untrue, but there's just something more complex going on. And the same with Jodie Comer's Isla character. Once again, that's kind of more, I want to preserve that one as much as possible because I didn't really know what her character was going to be like from the marketing. They did a really great job hiding some things. And in a way, because that was their approach, this was Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's approach to telling this story. This was their way in after so much time. The first movie, like I said, 28 Days Later, you find your family within this hellscape, but then you cut to this one and it's like they have a completely different approach in exploring that kind of family dynamic, like exposing the cracks of it and how that would affect like a young boy, who's still trying to grow and trying to grapple with these things. It is kind of like the inverse of like your traditional boy becomes a man kind of story, like I feel like a lot of times, especially in like an epic or action or a horror movie or like a thriller like this zombie movie, boy becomes a man is, he becomes more stoic, he kills a lot of things and people and is just generally there to protect people all the time. And in this movie, it's almost like the boy becomes a man story is handled in a more mature, just emotionally open way. And I found that very touching, and I definitely was not expecting that from the very grim, like, marketing to feel like this, like, kind of like overwhelming bit of sorrow at a certain point, but also to be uplifted and just a little hopeful a couple scenes later. Honestly, they really did a fantastic job really just, I figured they were going to do something narratively with these characters that would be like maybe shocking or surprise. I was not really expecting this very sentimental just approach to it. I feel like the first movie is, it's that thing of like everything sucks, but as long as you got your people, maybe there's a way out of this. And in this one, it's almost like they're trying to say there is a beauty in also making your own way in life as well. And, taking what you've learned from, your family or your close ones, and just letting that guide you as you make your own choices throughout this hellscape of a world. And I thought that was really cool. There's also another character played by Ralph Fiennes named Kelson. Once again, that's another character who, it's kind of hard to pin down what his character is all about in the marketing, so I cannot tell you, but I feel like, how they explore, a certain theme through his character, pairing him with Alfie Williams' Spike as well. I thought that just worked really beautifully at the end of the day. So this movie has exactly what you're looking for as far as like, the rage monsters, the zombies, the thrills that come with that, this wonderful technical display, great musical score, and also great usage of some soundtrack parts, like the Boots poem is played in the movie, and there's some really abrupt cuts to just like, suddenly danger's like really close that I was like kind of startled by, but there's no jump scare, no, it's just like it's closing in, and I thought that was really wonderfully done. So it has all the things that you want in one of these genre movies, but it's backed up with this really great screenplay, a really great story, and really led by, you have some incredible actors in Ralph Fiennes, in Jodie Comer, and in Aaron Taylor Johnson, but also Alfie Williams is not to be forgotten, playing Spike. He is the lead character in this. He has the most screen time, and he, as far as like a child actor, he's not a character who's written to be like annoying in that kind of sense, like that unearned sense that a lot of projects do, where they're like, well, I don't want to do what my parents do. I want to go out in the way, that kind of just like annoyingly kind of preachy kid thing. It's just kind of handled in a very like mature kind of way, especially if you're dealing with his theme of kind of maturing over the course of this film and really growing as a person. You got to really nail that, and I think they did, and the actor did a really great job, and he has a lot to work with, There's like few moments of like this joy and happiness, and just so many other complicated ones to figure out as well. Like, this really is an actor to look out for in the future, It's so wonderfully done. Man, I really did love this movie, and even the ending of this film, which some people have already called divisive, like I'm not sure how to feel about that, like the last 2 minutes or so. Some people say it's a tonal shift. I think, like, number one, it's something that ties back into how they open the film, so it's like, I'm fine with them resolving that in this one. I don't think it's a thing where they, should have saved it for part two. I'm fine with them kind of resolving it and leading to future hints of where they could take this story in the next part. But once again, going back to, like, this theme of, like, maturity, like, actually, what does it mean to, like, go from boy to man, especially in this kind of worldly context? I feel like the ending kind of presents, number one, there's more to, this hellscape Britain than just what we have been seeing of, like, always kind of like in fear, like stoicism kind of stuff. There's more going on, more ways people have handled it, and kind of embraced it. And also, the way that our lead character Spike has gone, over the course of the film versus this character that they've introduced, how they have, and where else you could explore that in part two, which, like I've said, is the one directed by Nia DaCosta. They've already shot. I'm excited. It was one of those things I was watching. I was like, I think this is something that people will probably complain about, but I'm excited. I like that this is here, like, because it's opening up my expectations of, like, okay, what else are they going to explore? What else could they do if they want to make, not just one other one, but a third film to tie this all up? What are they going to do? So I really love this movie. The only issue I could say is that there's a few, like maybe a handful of like editing parts where I was like, or maybe it was like editing combined with the cinematography where I was like, I'm not sure how to feel about that, but that could be something that erases, upon rewatch, because damn, man, I really was floored by this, in more ways than one. I'm gonna give 28 Years Later an A. I think this is a wonderful new installment of the franchise. It's, a bit of a margin ahead of the first movie, I would say also. I feel like both of them are pretty spectacular, but yeah, just the raw kind of like, human emotion that they instill into this one, I found that really touching, and I thought it elevated it to another level. I'm itching to watch it again. Can't wait to see more. I'm just so glad that Boyle and Garland came back to do this. I'm really excited to see what else they could do, and I'm also really excited to see how Nia DaCosta approached making part 2. Because I don't know if she did the iPhone thing or if she's just using a traditional movie camera or whatever. I'm just excited to see what they've got cooking up. You know, this is a movie that made me excited, but also it is a perfectly kind of self-contained story. You know, you could just watch it on its own. And, you know, the ending does hint at more to come, so, you know, you would expect, like, a part 2, but you could just watch it on its own, and it's like, I got a full story right here. But if you've seen 28 Years Later already, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.